Now, delighted to be joined in studio at this time by Daniel Davey. So Daniel, I know you've been on this before, but you have a new book out. You'll see it here for folks on the stream. Eat Up, the Next Level. Perform at your best physically and mentally every day. #1 best-selling author Daniel Davey, I should mention as well. So, what's inspired this book, and I guess in comparison to the previous book you've done?
The first book was about the basic principles of nutrition, and I guess trying to get the message across, as we were just saying, that food and eating good food can actually be easier than a lot of people think. And thankfully, that's the feedback I get, that it is relatively simple once you make a start at it, and once you get into it. This book is a progression in terms of my own philosophy and experience. So I'm very fortunate to have been in elite environments for the past almost 10 years. And this is an evolution. This is giving people an insight to how are athletes consistent and what can people take from athletes, and those type of those environments to be a little bit more consistent in their own lives. So more nutrition information, a little bit more detail, and then there's a focus on food that supports our immune system and food that you can eat around injury. And I noticed even one of the lads in reception had a cast on his arm, and the first thing I'm thinking about is, I wonder has he thought about the little things that he can do to support his recovery?
Yeah, I doubt he has. Most people don't.
Maybe he's listening to this now and he's like, oh, got to get him on his way out and ask him what I need to do.
Justified coming in this morning if that's what comes of it.
Yeah, well, you mentioned elite background, like maybe for people who are unaware of your background, you play Gaelic games as well and Dublin football as well. So what's your background? You've worked with Dublin football, senior football team, you've worked with Leinster Rugby as well?
Yeah, I played club football for my own club at home, Killarney Mullinbrina in Sligo and Ballyboden St Enda's.
So this is Sligo everywhere. Catherine's from Sligo, we have Cahill learning
I'm from Sligo as well, yeah.
Part?
Screen.
Oh, no way.
Yeah.
Well, I'm the south and you're the north. But we're still not that far from the
No,
coast.
we're not.
Yeah, half an hour anywhere in Sligo you can reach any point. So I'm from Sligo, but I'm in Dublin now for nearly 20 years, and so I've played club football at that level, and I'd like to think that I've lived it. You know, it's always been a fascination of mine. Body composition, performance, strength, all of these things, and now, as I said, immunity and injury. But I've worked with Leinster Rugby for almost 10 years and the Dublin senior football team for 9 years, but I've done other things as well outside of that. It's, golfers, jockey, athletics. It's the variety in sport. Just anybody who's competitive or interested in improving their performance, I really enjoy working with. I
was saying before we came on air as well, like the Michael Scott line from The Office, speak to me like I'm a 4-year-old, and I need that, like in terms of cooking. Like for someone like me, and there's plenty of people watching and listening probably who are similar lines to me, shock and cook. Yeah. Like and find it tough to eat healthily. Like I'll find myself sometimes buying those the fit foods, the ready-made stuff. So it's ready-made, makes it easy. But I mean, some of the recipes you have in here are pure and simple for people who are maybe not cooking inclined.
Yeah, it's funny. I remember I was doing a presentation with the Dublin team about 2 years ago, and like people's evolution and people's learning and experience around food evolves quite slowly. It's not like once you have the information or once you have this particular technique, away you go. It's like learning any skill. But I remember one of the lads had said to me beforehand, I didn't realise how simple some of, even the processes like using a single pot and cooking all of your main ingredients in one pot can be. And I shared it, and he said, "You're making me sound like a simpleton here." Yeah. But that's not it. It's like just having a little process, using a little bit of oil, garlic and salt, and just experimenting with that, and then using different types of meats. It's just introducing really simple approaches to your cooking that can make such a difference. Even your breakfast, an overnight oats, combining oats and milk and yogurt and a little bit of honey and putting it in a pot the night before and having it as an option for breakfast the next morning. Those are the type of things that you help people figure out along the way, and then they start going, geez, putting a couple of these things together really does make a difference.
Yeah.
I always remember watching, the Katie Taylor documentary when she first moved over to the States, and she was trying to cook for herself. And obviously an elite athlete, the best in her career path, but like, I was so shocked because there's something, you almost assume that athletes know these things or that they know exactly what they're supposed to be doing. And of course, why would they? Like, they're the same as everyone else. Some people are good cooks, some people are bad cooks, some people are interested, some people aren't. Did you find that much when you were working with people that say they were very invested in like the gym, or they knew exactly what they had to do on that side of things, but when it came to nutrition and feeding themselves right, that was harder to ingrain?
I remember that as well, and it surprised me to a point, because you're talking about somebody at the very top of their game, and you think, God, you think that they're good at everything, particularly if it's something that can influence your performance to this extent. It's second only to your training, and then of course sleep and mindset. But it's so important. But athletes, some of them can just get by, and we know so many of them that reach those levels, and they talk now. I've heard the stories of people coming in here talking about fries the day before or the days of All Irelands. I've heard, and I get these messages sent to me. The reality is there's probably about 10-15% of athletes that just cover all bases, everything from their rehab to their sleep. You might have heard stories about the likes of Jamie Heaslip. Now it's the likes of Josh van der Fleer, who just do everything. The Gary Ringroses, they have every aspect of their preparation absolutely spot on. And then you've got a group in the middle, I suppose, who they're influenced by others in the environment, and then if you really have a strong message around its importance, are going to listen and take these things on board. But athletes want to play a sport, and they want to train, and they want to be in good shape, and it has evolved. The understanding of its value, it has evolved, but it didn't start like that. And that was the first book, and the second book, as you can see it written on it, the recipes are things that I had to put together for athletes to make this simple and accessible. And now what's great is that it's mothers and grandmothers and kids that are trying these types of recipes. So the answer to your question is, you're always going to have a huge range of people who are interested, not interested, and some of them just do it because they have to.
It's funny, like you mentioned that thing about, maybe 10-15% of athletes doing everything to cover all bases. Like, I sat down, and the interview's coming up later on this morning, but Ian Rush and Neville Southall yesterday, and something Neville Southall said really stuck with me along those lines, where he was talking about when he was a goalkeeper for Everton and Wales, he would spend hours reading books and trying to perfect little things, so even improving minor things like his kit, his behaviour, his diet. And he said, if I changed 100 things and got 1% better because of one of them, then it was worth it. And that's probably the thing. Like, so many elite athletes and less elite athletes are probably watching this and thinking, right, you could pick up something from the book and think about one little aspect of your diet that could make the world of difference. It's only a 1% difference, but that's fairly big when it comes to elite. It's
absolutely huge. And what I have to manage is it definitely a stage was an obsession, how much value nutrition can provide for health and performance. It's, in terms of lifestyle and how we feel and our energy and our outlook and confidence and mood, I need to manage my own so that I'm not putting it on people.
Yeah.
But I talk a lot within team sport environments about you're eating for your teammate and you're eating for the team as well as just yourself. So if you talk about that 1%, you think about everybody making that difference to their performance, and how that can raise the bar, and that can raise your energy levels and what you can give. It could be that tackle, it can be that score in the last minute of the game because you got the energy to do it, or it can be you not getting sick or not getting that injury. That's the reality of it. So yeah, it has that impact.
It's important to, and it's something you speak about as well, is building a positive relationship
You actually read a couple of pages.
And listen, I'm the audience here. I'm the one who needs something like this to make things simple. But like that is so important, having a positive relationship with food, because very often a lot of us, and I'd be guilty of it as well, sometimes at the weekend, you'd be sitting there going, I'll get a takeaway. It's just easy, simple. Yeah. But like you can actually have tasty food that's good for you as well.
Yeah, I've seen over the past, particularly the past 3 or 4 years, I've seen a big shift. And it's in the athlete world as well. So it's this building a positive mindset towards food being an investment, whereas we are surrounded with how do we cut calories? What do we cut out? What should we avoid? Is this food healthy or is this not healthy? And that's not good for us. And there's also an obsession, and I include a section in it as well. There's a bit of an obsession around tracking. It's funny how people can get into this and then not actually know how to get out of it and think that that's the only way. And it's exactly the other end of the spectrum is this very close relationship or connection between how we're feeling. We've had a bad week or a bad day, and the answer is it's a bottle of wine on a Friday, or it's a takeaway, and that only compounds the issue. So it's recognizing, well, what is it for you or what is it for me, and what are the small changes? It could be a breakfast for somebody. It could be the Friday night for somebody else. It could be bringing your lunch for somebody else. Okay. So it's not, it's motivation, and our relationship with food can go up and down depending on the season, depending on whether we've had a big weekend, whether there's a wedding coming up, holidays, those type of things. And we're trying to create that little bit more consistency and remove those kind of shorter term perspectives on food.
And what would be your number one piece of advice to someone who's looking to introduce that sort of consistency to their life? It's
to look at what their, I would call them pinch points are. Where are the stress points in your week or in your day? And if you actually just focus on prioritizing something for that, it can make this huge knock-on effect on the rest. So a tiny example, I had a soccer player come to me looking to reduce his body fat during COVID. And he had a good 5-6% body fat to lose, and the only thing we focused on was his lunch, because he didn't have good options within the canteen and where he was, and he wasn't consistent in bringing in his lunch. And what was happening was he'd either skip lunch or not have something substantial at lunchtime, and he would come home in bad form and really hungry, and he'd overeat. And that this cycle continues. The only thing he did was focus on lunch, and it had this huge effect on his energy levels, on how he felt in the rest of the afternoon. But also, he wasn't overeating when he came in, or when he came in the evening, and he dropped that body fat. So it's that just real clarity on one particular area, like you mentioned already, Shane.
Yeah. My stomach rumbled as you were saying that. I skipped breakfast this morning. I feel like a naughty kid in school, the headmaster here.
That's the last thing. That's the last thing you should be thinking, because it's just right. Okay, well,
fix it.
Go after that tomorrow.
Yeah, exactly. Sometimes it takes that. Do you notice a difference between, and you do touch on it in the book as well, like dealing with athletes versus non-athletes? And I'm sure you have both sides of the spectrum as well. But is there a massive difference? Is it as big a difference as people think?
Well, first of all, the demands of those environments are significant, but also there's accountability within these environments. You've got physios, strength and conditioning coaches, you've got the coaches, and there's the competition element. And if you're not doing these elements, somebody else will, which means you're not going to play. So that's a huge driving motivator. And we don't tend to have that if we're outside of those environments, or we're outside team environments or clubs, and that's the benefit that being a part of something brings. And the reality of it is that it is much more challenging when you're on your own, and you got to build in that accountability. And it's understanding those principles first and foremost. So what exactly, like you mentioned already, Shane, Kathleen, about what is the one thing? Well, look at your week and try and create what I would consider as a high-performing schedule or plan for yourself, and prioritize one or two areas, and there's a very simple process. And people do it in business, people do it in sport, but there isn't enough thinking about it within lifestyle more broadly in the general population. What's working and what's not working.
Yeah.
And people in business, and you probably do it even in here, well, what are the things that people are engaging with? What are people not engaging with? Well, it's exactly the same within your nutrition. Did that one thing that I tried to implement, your breakfast, how did that make me feel? Did my energy levels improve? Did I like the breakfast? You know, did it make me feel full? Or do I need to try something different?
Yeah.
And it's that simple process over one or two things. That's what happens within elite environments around game plans, around strength and conditioning plans, around every aspect. And that's what I'm trying to communicate around simple planning.
Absolutely. How did it make me feel? It made me feel hungry and sad this morning. Breakfast, I have to say, so I'm definitely.
And your tummy is rumbling.
Yeah, exactly. I'm going to fix that. Lovely comment, finally, Daniel, in from Shifty Lad, one of our regular comments on the stream. He says, Daniel, do you have a website or Twitter to give an appointment? Do you deal with long-time injury, etc.? Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, I do. The injury one is fascinating for me because I think that's the space that's evolved the most in recent years, and it's actually not necessarily just the information. People immediately think about things like supplements. It's more of having a process, maintaining strength and maintaining a structure. That's the big value. I have a website. It's daveynutrition.com, and it's at daveynutrition on all platforms.
So can people get the book on the website? All good bookstores as well, I'd imagine?
Eason's, Dubray, all of them, the book station, they all have the book now. And for everyone who's bought it and supported it, thanks very much.
Yeah,
very much appreciated.
Lovely pictures of the ingredients and recipes as well, which it just makes it simple. You've got the served to preparation time, cooking time, total time, equipment, and just goes through it, and ingredients on the left hand side as well. So
yeah, the idea is evidence, so it's an evidence-based nutrition book with practical ways of you achieving that evidence-based approach.
Yeah, absolutely. So eat up, the next level, perform at your best physically and mentally every day. Daniel Davey, thanks a million for coming in.
Thank you.
As always.
Thanks.